Alright guys, today I'll be reviewing Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. This is a very polarizing coaster. A lot of people say it's one of the best B&M hypers. A lot of people say it's one of the worst B&M hypers. I absolutely love this ride. This is by far the best B&M hyper in my opinion. And honestly, I really only see Goliath potentially beating this. I don't even see Shambhala beating this. It's that good, and I'll explain why I think it's that good in this review. So for starters, you've got not really a whole lot of theming, really nothing actually, but I will say the station has a really good soundtrack. The trains here, they're normal B&M Hyper trains, 9 rows of 4, and they're very comfortable, no seatbelt, just the good old B&M clamshells, some of the best restraints on any coaster. So yeah, that's always a plus. I would recommend riding in the back and only the back. The front row really doesn't have any benefits in my opinion, besides the speed, which I mean, it's not really a speed monster. It's not Leviathan or any of the other Gigas really. So it's definitely about the airtime, so definitely go in the back on this thing. Try to get row 9 in particular, and specifically on the unload side of the train, and I'll get into that later, but for now, just know back row, unload side of the train, and you're going to start out of the station. You're going to get not really airtime, but you're going to get thrown a little bit to the side of the train on this little dip off, and then you have a very slow and obnoxious lift hill. And just pray that someone's not pulling their phone out on that thing, because they will go up there and take your phone away if you pull your phone out on the lift hill. But yeah, even if a silly situation doesn't happen like that, it takes a hot minute to get up here. It is one of the slowest lift hills I've ever experienced, but it's definitely worth it because you get a decent view of Great Adventure and the lake or river, whatever it is, to the left of you, and then you're going to start down your first drop. Now, this is a pretty average first drop for a B&M Hyper. If you get some room, you're going to get some nice sustained floater airtime. It's pretty strong floater, I would say. It's not ejector, although there are a couple ejector moments on this ride, I think. But yeah, this isn't quite one of them, but it's a fun first drop. After this, you're going to go into probably the weakest element on the ride. It's this first turnaround. You don't really get any positive G's going through it, and the airtime is very minimal. You get a little something in the back, but not a whole lot. This is really the only element of the ride that really doesn't do a whole ton. There's the hammerhead turn later in the ride, but we'll get into that later. After this is a nice sustained floater camelback. This is what you expect out of a good B&M hyper. It's a good B&M floater hill. Not the strongest on a hyper, not the strongest on the ride, but yeah, it's definitely a solid element. Great sustained floater airtime throughout, especially if you have a bit of room. Now comes the hammerhead turnaround. This is easily the best of these elements. It feels like you have a lot more speed. It dishes out some positive Gs. And also, I mean, the whole ride's in a great setting out in the woods with, again, that body of water straight in front of you. So that just makes this turnaround even better. After this is probably the single best moment on the ride. I absolutely love this second camelback. It is phenomenal. It's honestly ejector in my opinion. It's so sustained. It's so strong. It just hits right. It just feels like what a B&M hill should be, you know? It's really on par with like one of the last hills on Fury. Like, it's amazing. Maybe even better. I don't know. It's that good. Then you've got another turnaround, which is a lot better, let me say. You get great airtime going into it, and then a crazy lateral whip out of it, and these laterals actually kind of send you flying to the right, even though it's going to the left, because, I mean, these B&M trains, they leave you really exposed, and the way it just whips to the left kind of sends you flying to the right, almost. It's really weird, but I definitely love it. And then comes the most intense part of the ride. That's this double helix. Oh my god, you will, in my opinion, you won't find any more intense element on a B&M, even on an invert. I mean, this is more intense than Alpengeist's Cobra roll, Raptor's Zero G roll, Banshee's Pretzel knot, any of those great elements. This element just tries to kill you. It absolutely presses you against the seat the entire time. It's a guaranteed gray out for me no matter what. If I'm being honest, it's the most intense element I've ever experienced for positive Gs outside of the first turn on I-305 and the turn before the trimmed hill on I-305. So outside of that ride, this Helix is the most intense moment on any coaster I've experienced for positives. And coming out of this helix, this is why you want to sit on the unload side. You get another violent pop of ejector airtime. It's not quite RMC level. It's not quite as aggressive as something you'd find on Jersey Devil, but it's definitely a great ejector pop. And then you're going to hit the mid-course. You're not really going to slow down if my rides are pretty accurate, which I hear a lot of people say that these trims can slow you, but it hasn't happened for me, and I usually go on like 100-degree days, so I don't see why they would. You're going to get a great little ejector pop coming off of this, and then these end hills, again, remind me of slightly weaker versions of the final hills of Fury. They're like good floater to ejector airtime, somewhere in between there. Flowjector, I guess, if you want to call it that. Yeah, these final 3 hills are all really good. I mean, there's nothing else to say about them. Just strong, not that sustained, but very strong final hills, especially for a B&M. Then you're going to hit the brakes. I mean, this is such a diverse hypercoaster. It's way more diverse than any of the other hypercoasters. I mean, all the other B&M hypers just have airtime. That's pretty much all you're getting out of them. This thing's also got some of the strongest positives, period. Like, easily the strongest on a B&M, second strongest out of any coaster, period. You've got great laterals. I mean, you've got a phenomenal setting. You've got a great soundtrack, good colors, in my opinion. I know I'm colorblind, so that probably doesn't matter. But yeah, I like the colors. Overall, this is just a phenomenal hypercoaster. It does have a little rattle, but in my opinion, it doesn't really do anything to hurt the ride experience, unlike El Toro over on the other side of the park. So, I mean, for Nitro's final score, 933 out of 1,000. I really like this ride. This is, again, easily the best B&M hyper I've experienced. It's got really anything you could want out of a good B&M besides just the sheer relentlessness of Fury 325. And yeah, this is my second favorite B&M, period, over Alpengeist, Orion, Leviathan. I mean, again, only Fury beats this, and yeah, Fury's pretty significantly better than this, but yeah, it's definitely my number 2 B&M. I would honestly say number 2 a Great Adventure. It's such a good ride. Again, the setting, the airtime, everything, it just is everything you'd want out of a B&M hyper. And, well, I think the airtime's pretty much on par with, like, Diamondback and Intimidator. You have those positive Gs, those laterals, everything else that all the other B&M hypers don't have, which is definitely why this is my favorite B&M hyper and absolutely a top 25, maybe even top 20 coaster for me. So that's my review of Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. Let me know if you guys like this ride just as much as me down in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.